Here we go. Hey everyone, happy Friday. We'll go officially in not too long from now. Just wanted to say hi. Um, the one and only Chuck Williams is here with a working piece of equipment now, which is fantastic because the alternative is a fate worse than death. Yeah,
Silence, absence,
yeah, nothingness.
yeah, nothingness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which kind of reminds me. I mean, not to listen, not to like try to derail the show before it even starts with like weird philosophical stuff, but like if you don't have a funeral or remembrance service when you pass, it's almost like you just like disappear from ever of having existed to a certain extent. Like obviously there's like your belongings are there, obviously there's like memories, obviously there's like the literal impact on the world, like the productivity at the Amazon warehouse that you contributed to during your lifetime or whatever it is. The oh, that guy doesn't come to the coffee shop anymore. Obviously that,
Yeah.
but it's kind of strange how it's just like there's this whole world that revolves around our fleshy space, and then it just once you like you just die. It's like okay, that guy's a sack of potatoes. Throw him somewhere, and it's just they're done. There's just no person anymore. Just poof.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of weird.
Alex
And
Hormozy talks about that. Like 6 months after you're gone, nobody talks about you anymore.
yeah, I mean, obviously that's a little bit of an exaggeration. People who knew you and stuff talk about you, and if you had some sort of professional lasting impact, they talk about you. Obviously, if you had children, you have a gene pool out there. Like, there's all kinds of stuff, but for the most part, it's just like, oh yeah, that random dude just poof, he's gone. Like, just kind of disappears, which is kind of funny. Like, blockchains don't really work that way to the same extent. People just gradually stop maintaining them, and then they're just like eventually like, blocks just don't come out anymore, and just like it's still there. It's just like,
Yeah.
and then like
Yeah.
someone can just like whoa, it's going
Start
again.
kickstart it. Yep.
Yeah, and it's just like the long slow death, kind of like a death of an idea or something. And people are the same way though. Listen, maybe people are like the blockchains because our fleshy bodies disappear, but the real death is just like the idea. It's like people still talk about Elvis, like people Elvis comes up in modern conversation bizarrely, and so he's still kicking out the Elvis chain is still kicking out blocks, and but then poor Tiglath-Pileser. I mean, there's like no one other than me right now who's ever bringing that dude up, so that's pretty much gone.
That's it's interesting because you're kind of dancing around like all the reasons or a lot of the reasons that I built Voodoo Vitae or I'm building it because you know being able to track the merit of our actions is something I think that can give us a lasting memory of ourselves, a record that we
Hmm.
existed and specifically what we did, It's almost like a journal or a diary that
Yeah.
in a way, or it can be. But I
Also,
think yeah, that's how we extend our lives. Like when we create artifacts, that's the metaphor or the philosophical approach that I take. We conscious creatures are survived by what we create, and sometimes that's children, like you said. Sometimes that's energy. Sometimes that's moods and feelings in other people. Sometimes it's contributions to science or technology or art or literature, right? But all that stuff is essentially where we focus our conscious energy and what artifacts we create, and that's the game. That's the game of life. That as I, in a most boiled down description.
yeah, and that's also probably why you bought 100 years of hosting for the website, so that after you kick the bucket, it's still there. It's like, oh yeah, there, that Chuck guy's still around, kind of, Buy 100 years.
I didn't quite do that, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
It is kind of funny with like social media stuff too, because that's like a written representation of the person, and it's
Definitely
unlike
artifacts.
like unlike journals and articles and stuff where that's just kind of like you stamp it once in a while. It's like living. It's like you interact with
Hmm.
this thing. You see him interacting with people, and then there's like the trail just goes whoomp. And
Yep.
it's always funny how it's like an active one, and then it just goes dark for like a few days. Like, what happened? He loses his phone for like a few days, and then hey, this is so and so's wife. He tragically passed. And there's a message there. And a friend of mine who unfortunately had a substance issue that claimed his life a few years ago. He just pops up and starts like shilling me this car the other day. And I'm like, homie, ain't you supposed to be dead? It's like, oh, it's some scammer who just got his
Yeah.
account.
Took
And it's
his
like,
account. Yeah.
you know, like Facebook does this like remembering person thing. And then it's just like, oh, remembering him. But now he's back and he's flipping cars. Like, you know, he's back with a vengeance.
Jeez.
It's like, well,
Well,
apparently
like a lot of
not.
Biden's voters, right?
Remembering him. But now he's
Yeah.
he's back and he's yeah, ooh, audio thing there for a second. Yeah, that's an listen. Voters, how about the person himself, right? Like, just saying, like, it's close. And it is kind of funny. Yeah, it is kind of funny to see like the light dying in real time. Kind of like it's still there. And it's like this is not someone you'd recognize like 20 years ago, but it still is. And like, yeah, anyway, so many metaphysical things. This could go on forever. Let's actually roll the intro and stop. He's like, what the hell? We're supposed to dump on Maxis today. It's like, well, we're about to get to that. All right. Ready, guys? 3, 2, 1, intro. Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 164. I'm joined by the one and only Chuck Williams. How's it going, man?
Glad to be here, Joel. Thank you for having me. It's a great time.
Yes, it's always great, and it's always great to have the dual of the microphone voices, the radio voices. And unfortunately, I have a I'm you're competing with a handicap because you don't have this microphone. So you kick
Right.
my ass in a regular competition, but like as of right now, I might be winning. So because I'm cheating, and so
Fair.
it's just the way it is. Everyone, by the way, if you let me know if you hear any kind. I have the air conditioning on. Let me know if you hear it in any way that becomes annoying or distracting, and I could turn it off and start sweating in a way that is annoying and distracting instead. But just let me know if it's a problem. Otherwise, yeah. Yeah, so we have a bunch of fun stuff to talk about today, as always. It's funny, just as a random thing, my process for going through news to find things to talk about has evolved over these shows. In the early days, I mostly just hit up Cointelegraph, right? It just was like, I'm going to go to Cointelegraph, look at the headlines, and just see what I can talk about. And then, it didn't work out in the end. Cointelegraph puts out a bunch of crap anyway. And I did switch to CoinDesk at some point because CoinDesk is a little bit more condensed. And it's just like, okay, but even then that didn't really work out. And then I was just like looking at my X feed or whatever, my Twitter feed. And, there's always stuff here or there. Sometimes it's like a banger. The other times that's where most stuff happens. Most news happens like right there. For better or for worse, right? For me, for better. But it then eventually I was trying to say, who am I going to follow who comments on crypto stuff frequently enough to where this is like interesting. And recently I've just become that person. Like when I read something, I timestamp it by writing a post about it. And so I put a little Mid-Journey graphic and you throw it up there, and I wrote a little post about it. And so then I just literally say what I'm going to talk about. I scroll down through my own posts for the last week. I'm like, oh, there's this, that. And then I just find the sources. And so it's not just me showing my own commentary on this dumb show, which would be a little annoying. But so that's kind of funny how that's worked. The little timestamp.
That is interesting because that actually aligns with a lot of people that I've been following online, like the gurus, the entrepreneurial gurus, and the spiritual gurus. At least the entrepreneurial, like marketing oriented ones. That's kind of what I have heard a lot of them do. They comment on things and put notes almost to themselves. It's almost like a self diary on X, and then they come back to it and reflect on it. And it's almost like they're speaking to themselves as much as they're speaking to the world. So yeah, that's cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I would recommend for any founder type person to get on X as soon as you can, kind of thing. And well, not as soon as you can, but as soon as you're able to give it the thought to do it, because it's good to just see what people are talking about and just kind of have like your finger on the pulse. So you're not just in a dungeon building something that no one cares about, but also building that like personal. I mean, personal brand is such a shitty marketing term, but building up your personhood, sort of, and people follow people. They don't follow companies or they don't follow products, and just being kind of out there. It just as the regular habit of like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to comment on some stuff, and I'll just make an occasional commentary post. And it's just like people start tapping into that train of thought, and they're just like, I like this guy. And then you're like, hey man, I made this new app. They're like, well, I know what his design principles are like, what he cares about, so I'm going to pay attention to this. It's just kind of an interesting thing, right?
Yeah, that's good advice. Actually, I think I have been, in and out of my entrepreneurial journey for 25 years, and most of that as a career developer, some of that as a decentralized institutional contributor, individual contributor,
Mm-hmm.
and and then the crypto show, radio. But I would say generally through it all, web-facing online apps, consistently coding, consistently developing, consistently technical architecture, leading teams. And now for the first time, I think since you and I have really known each other, like I'm 6 months into full-time development on my project, my company, my organization. Me and my co-founder are putting in 6 to 12-hour days, writing code. We're 50% into our first angel round of fundraising. Everything that you're saying is, I would say, in alignment with the kinds of things that I have learned over the past 6 months to a year need to be done, should be done. And my holdup has been, really building a presence for myself. We brought a part-time person on to help with the marketing and things like that, but we're holding off on doing any kind of pushes until we have really something to show. We need a call to action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Need a button to click and product to sell, and it's interesting. I can definitely align with you in, maybe now or sooner rather than later is the time to get online and start, making a splash, making a presence, making connections, staking a claim in the mental space, the real estate of the mind, as we might say.
Oh yeah.
And then that, I think, that speaks to what we were talking about, I think, before we went online, which is an artifact of communication is often a relationship with somebody, and you can have a relationship with an audience, but you have to engage. There's a back and forth. It takes two people to kind of maintain that relationship, I think, in all kinds of relationships. Otherwise, if you're just broadcasting all the time and you're not engaging with your audience and pulling back information and learning and growing, then it's really one-sided, and it's just, I would say, a lower value relationship. But if you're an audience member and you know that you had a say or you had a voice or you had an influence, or you're asking questions that are then being answered by your, public broadcaster, I think that's a healthy way to progress these kinds of relationships, and in business and entrepreneurship especially. It's all relationships. Ultimately, it's all relationships. So, yeah, 100% in agreement. And I'm hoping to build and contribute to that space, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found it very useful to do a podcast and also a stream of consciousness thoughts type thing, because the podcast is, this particular live show was just a talk shit kind of show, but like the actual interview people and like learn about new people in the space. It's like, oh, that's a funnel for inside information, and then just to engage with the space on X, etc. is good too. But I'm sure a lot of people consider this to be navel gazing, which they might not necessarily like. So let's hit them with another thing that they really love, which is an ad read. Here we go. Let's talk about Coin ATM Radar, right? Which they've been my one reliable sponsor over this period of time. They're cool people, and they sponsor us. So anyway, when buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place, like people are doing at ECC in Brussels and getting shanked and stuff, or robbed. There's a bunch of people getting robbed there for some reason. Anyway, yeah, don't meet random people. That can happen. And unlike an exchange which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you could buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying, and you can also search by geo area, and you can also check and compare actual current fees from different ATMs. Find out more to go to coinatmradar.com or coinatmradar.com. Nice. So, yeah, I was my train of thought just thrown in the a few people who are ECC in Belgium were like, oh my gosh, like it's terrible. I got robbed. Oh my gosh, all this stuff. And then they're like, I saw someone mention something about the airport got evacuated for a bomb threat or something like that. And like, I haven't verified that, but it just seems like, man, conference season is like target rich environment. Also about buying crypto from an ATM instead of an exchange reminds me of Mt. Gox and all that stuff. Mt. Gox rearing its ugly head again 10 years later. What year is it? All because some dudes left their coins on an exchange.
Are they really? Is it really happening? Is there some more noise about that?
Yes, I think they're finally giving payouts and stuff.
Okay.
And so there's this anticipation of epic market dumping or something. But so, the market, I don't know if you check the markets. I mean, the last few weeks there was some pretty epic dumpage, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I saw the dump on the 4th of July conveniently happen on the federal closure of banks and markets.
Yeah, I mean, that's all. It's all surrounding Gox and then Germany for some reason. I don't know where they got their Bitcoin from. I didn't care to look into it because I don't care. They sold like all their Bitcoin, which is a ton of Bitcoin.
Germany had Bitcoin in their
Yes.
in their reserves, and they sold it all.
Yes.
Huh,
Or they
interesting.
sold almost all of it. I'm hearing people who follow this saying, look, they have none left. They sold it all now. So all their reserve assets of Bitcoin are just gone now. So
Interesting.
and that's what just dumped because, hundreds of thousands of coins flying all over the place. Like,
Well, I'm curious, in the case of Germany, who made the decision to purchase, and were they involved in the decision to sell? I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I am as well, but like also not enough to have prepared something like that for this show. So wait for us to get back on that later. But
that wasn't a request of you.
yes.
I'm just throwing out.
As far as the wondering, but it is kind of interesting. As far as like the Bitcoin that the U.S. owns, and I think the U.S. did. I think we covered it a couple weeks ago on a show. The U.S. did sell a bunch of Bitcoin as well through Coinbase, which is
that
funny.
were acquired through what? Theft?
I think it's
right?
all Caesars.
The Silk Road.
I mean, everything government acquires is through theft, but like in this case, it's like more explicit theft, like as in seizures of like Silk Road and other
seizures.
things. And so it's kind of funny that the SEC was suing Coinbase for being an illegal brokerage while they use it as their brokerage for crypto. Eric Voorhees pointed that out. That was kind of it was funny.
Yeah, good on Eric for pointing that out. He's really good at catching the ironies of government and government agents like senators.
Yeah, and it's kind of the interesting thing about Eric. He has really gotten into be a great writer and orator, and I think that skill has been very well polished. And by going out and giving speeches or shit posting to X or whatever it is, I think he's just honed that craft. And then now everything he touches as far as like a founder or whatever turns to gold kind of as a result because of his presence and his way of explaining why this matters kind of thing. It's like a skill. So it's like one of those founder skills, but he doesn't have as good a voice as you, though. I will say that.
Well, I mean, I think, you know what, on Eric Voorhees, I think he used something of mine in one of his speeches. He was having a debate with Peter Schiff,
If he says
and
real estate of the mind one time, I'm gonna be like, you know.
no, he was asking about why it was a conversation he was asking in the run up to the debate. He asked on Twitter about a question of money, monetary value, and something like that, and markets and something like that. And I can't remember exactly what his question was, but I told him at the bot. My response to his question was basically, at the end of the day, there is a conscious mind responsible for judging the value of whatever it is, that whatever you're buying, whatever you're using, whatever you're leveraging, the market price is ultimate. And this is just my a lengthy version of all value is belief, right? That was my response, is all value is belief. You have to believe that there is something worth paying for in order to buy it. And that's the bottom line for anything, for all exchange, for all transactions.
And that's the bottom line.
That's not mine, but he did use that statement or that idea almost verbatim in his debate with Peter Schiff, and I thought it was great in his opening remarks. And I felt really proud, but I didn't realize that until like a month after, when I saw the debate. I had shook his hand at an Denver conference, and was kind of job hunting at the time and thought I might work with him. But that's when he was going through the whole breakup of Shapeshift, basically, when it was becoming decentralized and he was winding down the corporate presence, basically. So anyway, long story short, I'd love to get in touch with him again, and because I think we're philosophically aligned, and I think I'm very soon to like I said, I'm 50% into an angel round of investing, and then I think I would love to have him on my investment board.
Yeah, I mean, we'll check that out. I ran into him in Austin, actually, during Consensus, and said hi.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he's
oh, wow.
fixated on his AI project, and he
Cool.
really liked, because I tried to generate. I had some Biden-related headline that I wanted to do a post on, and Midjourney refused to make the generation, and then
No.
just because it was like Biden looking worried, and it's just like,
Oh no.
it just was like an automatic censor, and then Eric was like, look, let me try something real quick, and he gets on his phone with his Venice.ai, and he made it make a graphic and sent it to me, and I used that instead. So
Oh, nice.
not only
Cool.
is it by his company, but he did the prompt as well for that post. So
Nice.
yeah, cool dude. We'll chat about that. Randomly throwing up on the screen because it just popped up as we're talking about it. There's this chart someone posted on X saying Germany has sold all 50,000 of its Bitcoin. There's some chart showing the supply or whatever. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see where that goes. But yeah, they dumped. They dumped.
I think they're going to be sorry.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, depends. Obviously, we don't know what the long-term price action is going to be like. But also, I mean, they kind of created a bull trap, this market. They kind of helped. So unless they just buy at the bottom there, I don't know.
Right.
Maybe
maybe. I mean, I've heard some manipulators with that kind of clout, they might dump just to tank to buy back,
Yeah, for sure. Let me hit up our buddy Michael Saylor. Thing. Just a clip of Senator Loomis talking about, we're going to enshrine Bitcoin right of self-ownership, all this other stuff. And he's talked about, so Saylor commented on this saying, nothing is more American than privacy, property rights, and a dollar backed by Bitcoin. So, let me get your takes on this.
So I think if I recall, I didn't. I don't know if you played it or whatever, but I watched it a couple times. And Michael Saylor, first off, is one of my favorite people in the Bitcoin and corporate space. He's one of those entrepreneurial gurus that I look up to, mostly because he's able to take really, really complex ideas and boil them down to pure simplicity, just simple man on the street kinds of statements. And I think it's incredible. And I know how difficult that is having tried to build a pitch for for my organization and boil down a really big idea into a simple idea, a simple truth, and so I respect that. And but in this case, yes, I was very surprised to see that he was commenting on the RNC, the Republican National Convention,
Mm-hmm.
coming out and saying that they're opposed to CDBCs. I was blown away by that. I didn't know that that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then to propose BTC as a treasury reserve, yes, I think that's great. I'm surprised and enthusiastic for this signal. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because I fully subscribe to the notion that politics is downstream of culture. And so this is a very clear and strong indicator to me that Bitcoin is now embedded into our culture at
Mm-hmm.
some fundamental level if politics is taking a true position on it. I mean, the Democrats in office have had anti positions for Biden's entire term, as far as I can say, especially Pelosi and a number of other Democratic supporters. Um, and I have been very frustrated with that whole situation. Also, the negativity of the SEC and the agency usage and around that. Um, a lot of government agencies are acting stupidly with this and not seeing it for the freedom opportunity that it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because they don't have control over it. Like that's the fundamental problem. And I think that that's an idiotic position to take, because we can't control everything in life. Anyway, to stay on point, I think Sailor's post is great. I love to see him sharing the stuff. This is just a signal of that we're headed in a better direction, or at least there are some positive counter forces to the doom and gloom and darkness and stupidity and idiocracy that's happening in politics otherwise.
Yeah, it's very interesting because there's two very clear threads, and I think you hit on one, and I'm going to hit on the other, and they're kind of opposites, right? So, and I have to say, it is undeniable that Sailor has had effectiveness in communicating things, for sure, because he's the face of Bitcoin today, and basically I call him the CEO of Bitcoin because
Mm.
for all intents and purposes he is. Now, what I got from this was kind of a much more dark and sinister kind of thing. Sticking with Bitcoin from the peer-to-peer electronic cash system over to today, a lot of ideas that have been very unhealthy to the freedom money properties of Bitcoin has sort of come from this purely investment thesis kind of thing, that it's an institutional grade asset, the digital gold asset. And he's kind of the guy who started a lot of this stuff. And it's interesting because everything's relative, right? If you have the perspective of relative to where we are today to, oh, we live in a fiat, hellscape. And then you see, oh, guess what? There's big forces moving non-fiat into the limelight. And, oh, we have an unbacked US dollar that we're using. Oh, we're going to add another like treasury asset to help back it. That's like a positive move. Now, relative to that, yes. On the other hand, the idea from the early days for a lot of us is that, like I like to say at the end of the show, fiat's a scam, right? Fiat's a scam. We're trying to supplant fiat. We're trying to supplant the central banking system. We're trying to do all that kind of stuff. Whereas Saylor is a very pro-fiat person. He wants the dollar. He said this openly. He wants the dollar to persist. He wants, he thinks the U.S. dollar should be the reserve currency for the world, etc. And he wants Bitcoin as a backing asset for the dollar. And compared to, if you compare those two visions, this is completely crazy as far as wow, like they're turning the dollar they're turning Bitcoin into just the Bitcoin is merging with the dollar kind of thing. It's not supplanting the dollar. It's merging with the dollar and becoming kind of a backing of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a little freaky it for a Bitcoiner to be like, wait, what the hell? I wanted this cypherpunk money. Instead, I'm still going to be using the dollar and CBDCs eventually forever, and just I might be a little richer because I was early to Bitcoin, which is a backing asset to this stuff. So anyway, that's kind of like a almost like a polar opposite, but I would kind of argue it's looking at a different side of the exact same truth. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that Saylor's masterful move could not have been done if fiat currency didn't exist, and that's why he's, I think, such a staunch supporter of fiat currency. I mean, to be able to loan yourself at 0% interest a potentially unlimited amount of money backed by ideas to buy real proof of work property in the name of Bitcoin is, and then increase the value of your fictional entity just by making this self loan at 0%. It's fucking incredible. It's incredible. You can't do this without fiat currency. You can't do it because it's difficult to fathom the amount or the number of institutions and institutional faith and presumed societal value that are being leveraged by that move. The corporate system, the federal banking system, the corporate loaning and in equity investment, SEC regulated type stuff, all of that wrapped up with the entire cryptocurrency market and the backroom deals that happen in business. I mean, Michael Saylor is a negotiator of and he's sitting at the table of the biggest deals, and he's evoking something that is true because he's done the historical research. Like, he understands the history and the point in history of like what the significance of Bitcoin from a really, really big perspective. And I think that's one of the things that I too have kind of disliked about, if we're going to critique Michael Saylor, is his support of fiat currency and the institutions that depend on it and manipulate it. I feel like it's a necessary concession to have a Bitcoin CEO, right? To have a voice embedded in that machine. I don't think we're going to get a purist. We're not going to get a purist. A purist would not be accepted in those spaces. So I see it as transitional. And, the dollar probably will be around for another 10 to 20, maybe even 30 years, But we do, but this is the kind of thing that would transition us away from it eventually. So I'm overall in support,
Yeah, but it's kind of, I guess there's a lot of splitting of, like, which layer of this is good, which layer of this is bad. And my personal perspective, is this good for Bitcoin? Like, if you own the asset of Bitcoin, is this going to make it more valuable? I think yes. Is it good for freedom money? I think no. Is it good for the proliferation and mainstreaming of other crypto assets that might be more, freedom money oriented? I do think yes. I think you ride in under the coattails of, like, well, Bitcoin's a reserve asset. Why can't we go pay with freaking Dogecoin or whatever? I think that's good there. Is it maybe does it maybe institutionalize and defang something that was a very much had the opportunity to supplant some of these institutions a little bit earlier? I also think yes, in that case it's bad. So it's like one of those, like, like, from my perspective, if I'm going to be like a macro, like, just like looking over the entire planet, like I'm, that blue dude in fucking, what was it? What was that superhero movie? Watchmen. If I'm like Dr. Manhattan Watchmen, just looking over the world, if I'm kind of like that, I might give it a toss up of a 50-50. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's definitely, having a positive outlook on this definitely requires me to let go of the concept of what Bitcoin was and accept Bitcoin for what it is today. And that is a much easier thing because I'm not using Bitcoin in my day-to-day life. I'm using alternatives, and it's just like, because what I want, freedom money, is safe, than Bitcoin being this weird institutional grade asset, whatever. I can't, I don't have a problem with it. Now, if you look for Bitcoin Cash type people's perspectives, I think they'll be all like 80 to 100%. This is horrible kind of thing. Partially because they see Bitcoin as still being what it used to be, and anyway, it's kind of interesting. I don't personally hold any, like, I understand that Saylor is influential. I don't hold any personal admiration for the person because I kind of see him opportunistically taking a great technological evolution and hampering it to some extent so that he can remain at the top of that. But I mean, a lot of that is also speculative about motivations and things. I know he has shut down some of the ETFs from donating to open source Bitcoin development, like freaked out at him, told him, we'll destroy you if you do this kind of thing. And some weird things, they're like weird power play kind of moves that I've heard about secondhand from people that were allegedly involved with that. But it's interesting for sure. But I will comment more on what you mentioned about, like, as part of the what he is commenting on in this case, which is the the Democrats got pretty anti-crypto. Everyone was sort of like, I don't know, but I don't trust it in government up until now. And then this year, the Democrats, last few years, but with a culmination this year, the U.S. Democratic Party got really anti-crypto. And Elizabeth Warren was deliberately campaigning on that. And now the Republican Party is just like, old Teabag's going to be at the Nashville conference in a couple of weeks. I might even see him there. We'll see. And like Trump's speaking at the Bitcoin conference, and so is RFK, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew RFK was, but I didn't know Trump was.
He is now, and also like it's crypto as well as the right to self-custody crypto is in the National Republican Party platform now.
Nice.
And so
that's great.
Like, that's a little surprising. I didn't think it would go that far. I thought it'd be like, well, yeah, Bitcoin's great, it's fine. We're gonna keep the SEC from going out. They're out of control. We're gonna rein them in a little bit, deregulate, just like some soft stuff. But no, they're just like enshrine that shit, and it's like party platforms are, it is what it is. We'll see what actually gets passed. But from that perspective, I do agree that this is pretty huge. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a strong, clear signal, and it's coming from an unsurprising place. If you were in 2022, 2020, and you had to make a bet as to which of the two American parties which of the top two parties would support crypto first, the Republican is just it's the platform, the Republican Party, what do you call them? Their tenets or their principles, the things that they generally stand for,
or
align better.
At least lip service too, but yeah,
they align better with the ideals of Bitcoin and the ethos of Bitcoin and crypto. And that's not to say that they don't. And I'm just contrasting that with, I think in a lot of ways, the Democratic Party is very focused on social status, social, like the state of society from a human perspective, it seems. Therefore, welfare, immigration, not so much economics from a, business and market perspective, but economy from a wages in the pocket of individuals and welfare perspective. I'm pretty sure it was Democrats that got welfare and other government payments included in the income for the economic stuff, measures. I mean, GDP 60%. GDP is 60% of, or excuse me, government is 60% of GDP now. And there's so many things that like um, that the Democratic Party supports from a social perspective that have bad financial outcomes. Like this is a clear signal on the other end of this, economic spectrum to take a stand and work from a place that's, you know, at least it's been demonstrated to be clearly a force or a hedge against inflation, which most people don't really care about or understand. But I think the conversation is coming up now because it's becoming so painful. It's becoming so obvious. It's
Mm-hmm.
happening so fast that, I think this kind of stance is something that will appeal to people paying attention. And honestly, I'm really beginning to believe. I want to test this thesis, but it seems to me like disinterested, disconnected, doom and gloom people are more likely to vote Democrat. Interested, engaged actors are probably more likely to vote Republican. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, today for sure. It's weird how
Yeah.
like the dynamics of the parties have changed a little bit. Like in terms of like for example, like the hot, cool, sexy people were definitely the Dems in the 90s, early 2000s, up until the Obama era, and that's like that was the end.
Yeah.
That was the apex.
Hmm.
And then now you have like the hot to a girl and all those people, like all that stuff seems to be more associated. It is interesting. I think the one catalyst, like from my macro perspective, as someone who's been learning as I've been going along, nothing much in the escalation of U.S. and global politics has really surprised me too much, except Trump was a wild card in that Trump is the resurrected, vengeful spirit of Harambe, rest in peace, who came to just throw monkey wrench to the simulation. Because after Harambe died, everything's been kind of weird. Everything's been like all bets are off. And so with what Trump has got, like his approach to things just being like, I don't care about decorum. I don't care about, appeasing party faithful. I don't care about any of this stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And then that, even after he's gone, and I do think that even if he wins this election and he's there for 4 years, I think he's going to disappear entirely from politics afterwards. I think he's done. Also, he's old as crap, but that's a different thing. But so
Yeah.
I think that the whole conservative, I think conservatism on the right is sort of dead as far as like we're gonna sit there and be careful and conserve. Like now it's just like, no, let's do it. Like build a great glorious Bitcoin mining empire. Let's do it. Let's back this with that. Let's cut 75% of like Vivek Ramaswamy's whole like ethos is sort of like the new ethos of, I would say, the GOP, in that he's talking about like Millet style, cutting 75% of federal bureaucracy, firing them all, like all this kind of these bold moves. So like the boldness. So I think that under my previous assumptions, having a very strongly pro crypto platform for one of the major parties, the one that's likely to win, in fact, it did not make sense this early in the game where no one's paying with crypto. If it's like a third of people are paying with crypto every single day, that makes more sense that would be represented in the party. But then the wild card came in, and now it's just like, let's do bold, premature things. And so that's kind of where we're at. That's probably enough ranting on that specific issue. What was the next one? Oh, yeah. The HODL tax.
HODL fee. Yeah.
Which I've
They
said,
call it a HODL fee in the article.
yes,
But yeah, kind of a tax.
Everyone talking about it calls it a tax. So Bitcoin
Yeah,
Magazine,
you want to set it up.
a person, I forget the actual person's name because they figured it out, but he's going by Bob here.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why you put such a controversial opinion to the ecosystem, I guess. Put a controversial opinion and then hide behind a pseudonym, but then not really try hard to disguise who you are. Like, everyone knows who this guy is now. I forget the guy's name, but he also, from his personal account, shared this thing as if it's his opinion, because
Oh.
it is. But he just
Okay.
goes by Bob. I don't get it. But anyway, assuming you at least skimmed the basic ideas of this, what'd you think of his thing?
Yeah, I actually read that one through, and as I was reading it, it felt to me like one of perhaps hundreds or thousands of different opportunities for gamification of the Bitcoin blockchain. It reminds me a little bit of the Nash equilibrium, and I don't know all the details. Like I can't describe that because I'm still reading it through and like understanding it. Like I know there's been all kinds of studies and there's competitions about this kind of thing, but the way I understand it is it's basically the price of information versus the cost of behavior. That's kind of the tension that's being played within this space. And a HODL fee, the claim in the article is that it's fair. Like I don't know if that's I don't know if that's unequivocally true that it is fair, because it's debatable. It may be debatably fair, but it's not. I don't know if it's actually fair, because fair is, it's kind of subjective. But I would say, and also to be honest, like reading through the article, if the ethos that is, if the claim of the principle is the the Bitcoin ethos is about proof of work, and therefore, if you're not doing any work, you shouldn't receive any benefit, or you should have to pay for the cost of essentially storage fees. Um, it seems a little bit disingenuous, because it's obfuscating the work involved in acquiring the Bitcoin in the first place. You know, I had to pay the transaction fee up front. You moved it. We moved it. I paid to move it from this address to this address. Now I should be able to. I'm advocating, you know, devil's advocate. I should be able to store that bit of data on the chain along with everybody else's bits of data for as long as the Bitcoin chain lasts. I thought that was the price of the mining fee. You know, the transaction fee, whenever it happened.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like, HODL doesn't exist in technical terms. It does not. It's not a thing. You publish
Right.
a thing, a movement of the coin to the blockchain, and you pay for it, and that's it. And it's like you're
Yeah.
charging people for things that don't exist. Is kind of like
Right.
the blockchain has no idea who is what or what is what. It's just coin to address, coin to address. Coin is here, goes there, goes there. That's it. And you pay to
Yeah.
append the ledger. But then if you don't append the ledger, what are you going to pay? Like, from a technical sense, purely, it makes absolutely zero sense. From an economic sense,
Right.
it's a different story.
Well, and again, even from an economic sense, it's not only does it discount the acquisition costs and the literal pragmatic transaction cost of the acquisition itself, and I'm referring to the acquisition costs of figuring out how to buy it, putting the money in the right place, doing all the moves to move things around and get it to the right, sign up an account on an exchange, risk your KYC, whatever the fuck. Like that might be a month-long process depending on the system. So, you know, it's not like there's no expenditure there to just acquire your first Bitcoin. But then post acquisition, there's still security costs. You know, are you going to put it on a hardware wallet? Are you just going to write it down on a card and put it, you know, toss it aside? Like, no, you have to give that thing some attention, and care and protection, and there are costs associated with that, however small or big you make them. I think that those costs should be proportional to the amount on the Bitcoin. Like if you've got, like I have a rule of thumb, like I will pay 10%, up to 10% of the thing to protect the thing. If I buy $1,000 bike, I'll spend $100 on a GPS tracker and a good padlock, or, you know, something like that, right? If I'm protecting $1 million, I might be willing to spend up to $100,000 to protect that $1 million. That might be the case. I shouldn't have to, but you know, that there's thresholds there. But I'm just saying that should be your budget, you know, as a general rule. And that's not nothing, you know. But then to have a tax on top of that, even if it's minor, yes, I get it. It might take 50,000 years for a whole Bitcoin to be, I don't know, HODL feed away under this proposal. But still, I I don't know. It may be overall, like all things considered, because it's a deflationary asset.
Hmm.
I think that might make it a little bit more okay. But again, I feel like this is one opportunity of thousands of gamification opportunities where, and I guess one of the things that I'm concerned about is like, is this a problem? Is this a problem that needs to be solved? Are the miners not making enough? I don't
Yes,
know. Like,
it is a problem, and that's where this gets interesting. And I did a post on this, but I'll probably, as I mentioned, time stamping my reading of the news. But
hmm
I'll kind of reprise that a little bit. Ultimately, so Bitcoin, as we understand, anyone who's read the white paper understands exactly how it's meant to work. Is a transactional system, and you transact and you pay fees to miners. Miners get the coin issuance in the beginning, the inflation. Eventually, there's 21 million coins, and that's it. And then it transitions to 100% fees. It's
hmm
sort of like a company that has VC capital. They're burning through that, and they get customer revenue. And at some point, there's a flippening, and then eventually you're only on customer revenue when you're a successful business. It's the
hmm
same deal. Bitcoin is designed a very specific way, and I have to say, like, the whatever you consider Bitcoin today that has changed, um, the fact that you change it means some things are going to have to change too. So because the block size is restricted, then in order for the mining revenue to be enough to keep the chain secure, then you have to have more in fee revenue. But if you can't have more transactions, you can't have more customers, you have to charge each customer more. So each transaction has to pay more. And
hmm
ultimately, that just, other than very small spurts, that's not really happening very often. It is
The
trending.
charging more isn't happening.
Yes, like the average Bitcoin transaction fee today is something like $1 or like 68 cents or something like that,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
the
Ranging.
same as it was in like 2016, 2018, or 2017, early 2017. Now, of course, it went up to like $800 a transaction, like
Yeah. I
not too
paid
long ago.
$50 once.
I mean,
One time.
a person who but I won't mention on the podcast, paid 800 and something dollars for a single transaction fee, and he did it over Christmas Day in order to have a better rate.
Oh
So,
my God.
like,
Wow.
I'm just saying, it can get really high, but it's not consistent enough. So the actual security budget for Bitcoin is actually trending flat or down. Now, security budget is in strength of padlock as a proportion to what it's securing is trending very far down. As far as like
hmm
the actual incentive to fuck with the network is way higher. But so it is a problem that people have not figured out really how to solve. You'd have to either increase the block size so more transactions can come through. You have to find a way to like charge more in fees consistently rather than just these spikes. And so far, there hasn't been anything that will do that. Maybe miners will just have to start rejecting low fee transactions to artificially themselves, like bump up the
Well,
things.
yeah, that's my main question though. Like, are miners not profitable? I mean, I know it's a struggle, and I know it's like a technology race to the bottom in terms of price and volume, max volume maxing in terms of like hash rate. But are they just by and large not profitable? I thought they were doing okay,
Well,
these past few
anyone is
years.
profitable. Well, the thing is, there is no such thing as a profitable miner, just like there is no such thing as an unprofitable miner. If he's unprofitable, he doesn't mine. And then, because of the way it balances out, the block reward goes to miners. And if there's too many miners, they won't be profitable. They'll drop off, right? And just the
Right,
natural thing. But the point is,
right.
right now, as of right now, when I checked, the fee in reward percentage, is in how much of percentage of the miner's paycheck comes from customer revenue, is 2.76% today.
Oh, really?
So it is not good. So
Okay, so the mining reward itself is still the
the inflation,
majority.
yes.
Yeah,
And
okay.
so if a miner's like, well, I'm not going to take those transactions or whatever, like, who cares? But honestly, it's also at this stage where the miners could just say, you know what, I'm going to mine empty blocks. And then the amount of
hmm
revenue they're skipping out on is like not that much, so they could do that too. So it's in this weird spot. I do believe the average person would not pay $20 or more every time they need to move to self custody or whatever. Only large institutions would pay that, and even then, large institutions don't need to do anything really. They could.
I might challenge you on that
Mhm.
because it depends on how you treat it. Like, the average bank wire fee is somewhere between $45 and $75. And so I think that's the target that
Yeah.
you might want to consider as the comparative rate.
So if you're going to do $75 to get your paycheck every month or every 2 weeks, that's a lot, for
Well,
that.
that's what I'm saying. Like, if this is if you're talking about like the equivalent of a bank wire transfer, and you're thinking of your Bitcoin as from a HODL perspective, that's basically how you're thinking of it.
Hmm.
If you're thinking of it as your daily expense account, I would, I, I think very few people are there. I know you've been there for a long time,
Yeah.
but you're in the like 0.0001% of not
Yeah.
only just the general population, but maybe even the crypto population.
Yeah.
Like, most
I'd
people
agree.
don't live day to day.
Yeah, but so now if you charge $40 a transaction or whatever, average
Mm,
people will probably never self custody. That will only be like literally like a year-end retirement type account where it's just like, okay, at the end of the year maybe I'll dump something in there.
yeah. Well, see, I thought that's what Lightning was about. It was about, reducing the fees for your everyday expense transaction. I thought that was the whole shtick. You
Yeah,
can buy coffee with the Lightning.
it doesn't work super well for that because it's just, as I tell everyone, the anyone to anyone Lightning network capacity for daily transactions is 0. I can't send to anyone. I can send only with someone who I have a channel with or who has another channel with or whatever, as long as there's liquidity along the route. So because of that, it ends up being, I mean, this could be another several hour podcast just on Lightning, but it ends up being a more institutional tool where it's just like, all right, I'm a Kraken
Hmm.
user. I want to send to a Coinbase user. Kraken, Coinbase have big liquidity pools and a well trafficked channel, so I get to for a like 10 cents send to a Kraken user because it goes zoop through
Okay.
there. It's like settling
Yeah.
between institutions. But I guess even the thing that Lightning has shown it can do is when it's useful to people, which is not often, but when it is, it does save on transaction fees. But what it does not do is it does not end up contributing that to the actual miners themselves. So the miners get
Mm,
less money from that. So either way, we have
right.
this ticking time bomb, the security time bomb, and there's just no good. There's something. Paul Stortz, who does drive chains of Layer 2 Labs, has an interesting, basically merge mine a side chain into Bitcoin that could do anything, like a big block side chain, and then all the fees end up getting collected by miners in the end of the day. And so miners get to basically get paid, fees stay low, blocks stay small. It's the only solution that kind of does everything, but no one seems to want to do that for some reason. So now we're
Mm.
having this thing where it's like, how are we going to keep the network secure without the money? And that's where the HODL tax comes from. Now, here's my hot, and it's one dude, and it pissed off a lot of people when he put that article out there. So mad. Um, my hot take on this was there will be a HODL tax, but it will not be at protocol level. Instead, you'll have custodians, like let's just say you'll have your Van Eck account or your whatever else, and just like a bank account charges you to hold a, well, I mean, last I remember, let me just say, bank accounts sometimes charge you fees to keep an account open. Then like Coinbase will start charging you to have your Bitcoin account open, like because they just hold it for you. You're not transacting. It's like, well, if you send it within blah blah blah, well, we'll deduct that fee. And so even though Bitcoin will be like, ha, I'm not paying a HODL tax, but then you are because all the custodians are going to pass that fee on to the consumer. The fee being the fee that now, in order to sustain the network, every time they want to consolidate their inputs or transfer from VanEck to whatever else, to Bitwise or whatever, they have to pay like a $8,000 transaction fee, and they're like, all right, let me pass that fee on to the consumer, and so
Mm.
they'll pay it that way eventually, unless there's a new elegant way like drive chains of getting fees back into the miners without without increasing the block size like literally. So
Hmm.
anyway, that's that.
Yeah.
What an interesting world the institutional Bitcoin has become. I think that
Yeah.
I do like that these articles and such are coming out because, uh, as I mentioned, Satoshi had not to get all Craig Brady on you, but Satoshi had a vision, and the vision has since been deviated from, which obviously I'm not happy about. A lot of people aren't happy about. The big block camp's not happy about, but it is what it is at this point. However, being that it is what it is, now you have to rethink your assumptions, right? Because you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm going to, you know, I may have a certain schedule, a certain diet, certain priorities because I am a professional athlete. I'm a professional MMA fighter, whatever you, and then you decide I'm going to be an accountant. Okay, you don't just decide to be an accountant though. Now you have to rethink your life. You have to be like, am I going to need to spend this much on food and recovery? Am I going to eat this much? Absolutely not, because you're sitting at your desk all day. You're going to get balloon up to 800 pounds if you're eating an MMA fighter's diet with like so little exercise. So you have to rethink your life. And so if Bitcoin is going to be institutional, like it is, some of these assumptions, like who's going to keep the lights on, need to be rethought. In these kinds of articles, even though I don't know if the HODL tax is the best idea, but just putting it out there that something's going to have to pay the bills, I think is valuable as we rethink this whole thing.
What that makes me think of is, in you can look at. I love looking at technology adoption curves, and if you've
Mm-hmm.
never done this to the audience, I'm sure you have, but I always suggest you go look at the history of, or the historical adoption rates of technology, like the
Mm-hmm.
telephone, electricity, um, the refrigerator or refrigeration, automobiles, the internet, aircraft, flying, things like that. You can see throughout history that all new technologies take some amount of time to get into the collective space, and then reach high levels, 80% of adoption, right?
Mm-hmm.
That time span has been shrinking over time as the world has become more connected. And it was said, I think Bruce Lipton said it, but it's probably based on a lot of other people. But on average, it takes about 15 years for a new idea or new discovered science to get into the culture. And what's interesting about that is we're at the 15-year mark for Bitcoin. Because it was launched in 2009. Here it is, 2024, and we are just crossing that 15-year mark. So now we could probably say, statistically speaking, between the 15-year general and the acceleration of the adoption of technology. And by the way, AI has been one of the newest technologies and the fastest adopted technology. Crypto was, before it was crypto before that, also one of the fastest adopted technologies in history. But still, I don't think we're over 10-15% of the global or even Western population who are crypto users, who could be considered crypto users. We're just talking about awareness here. And so again, I say again, I think we're still early. I still think we're still early. We're just at the very beginning of real boots on the ground action of, now that it's in the consciousness, now that it's in the awareness, the average person can say, oh, I have this additional tool available to me to build my business, to make my idea, to, exchange, in terms of Bitcoin, and then now AI. And I guess my point is that it's 2024 and we're still at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We're still early on the adoption curve. We're still early on a lot of things. And when you think back to, like, maybe the audience here has experienced some of these major technology adoptions. Maybe some of us can remember back to the late 90s, early 2000s, when the internet was just coming up. I mean, the internet was 30 years old in 2000. And that's something that most people don't understand. Most people were just getting online when it was 30 years old, right? So now here we are with Bitcoin being 15 years old. What if the majority of the world's population doesn't get their first Bitcoin for another 15 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
And by then, it'll be like, oh, yeah, Bitcoin's been a thing. Bitcoin's an established thing. It'll be old news by then. Nobody's going to think it's new, but there's going to be a lot of new stuff happening because the infrastructure is so well spread and so well established. And people like you and I have been working hard enough. And people like Eric Voorhees and Michael Saylor have been promoting and contributing and guiding the space. That, I mean, 10 years from now, it's going to be a different world. You know,
Absolutely.
I think 15 years ago, today, let's see, it was 2005 when the iPhone came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's lives are different. Dating is different. Healthcare is different. Most industries are different. Teaching is different. Mental illness is different.
We got craft mental illness now.
I mean, everything has changed because of these technologies.
Yeah.
I mean, no, TikTok brain is a thing, right? Who would have said? What the fuck is TikTok brain 20 years ago? Nobody knows. But now it's, oh yeah, okay, short attention span, okay, broken people, okay,
Yeah.
narcissism, okay.
Which I have it a little bit because I do consume some TikTok, and one thing I've noticed is the first time I started watching these things, it was hard for me to go to sleep right afterwards because it'd be like it's just so much like punch in the face. I'm like,
Right.
And then I've since adjusted, and now as soon as I say I'm gonna go try a YouTube instead, I just pass out in 12 seconds flat. I mean, seriously, it's just because I got amped up. I got used to the crack that is, TikTok.
Yeah.
And then now I switch to YouTube. Hello, today we're gonna. It's like a bedtime
Yeah.
story. I'm just out.
I think people are thinking that they have dopamine issues because they can't pay attention in a conversation these days. It's just this short attention span theater on steroids has really changed us.
Have you seen the new raw dogging trend? Which again sounds like it. The etymology of the word comes from probably where you think it does. But
yeah,
it actually means like people that go on like long flights and don't do anything.
I've heard this. I'm like, what the heck? No, you're using that word wrong.
Yes. But basically, they're just saying like doing it raw, as in they're not sprinkling entertainment things to keep their just mental focus.
They're like, they're not using. They're being. I call it device free, okay, or screen free. Like I'll listen to music, but I have like me and my girlfriend. We have a screen-free Sundays where we don't watch any media. We don't watch any.
With Raw Dog Sundays. That's a different.
Exactly. If I called it Raw Dog Sunday,
it'd be something very different.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's like on a personally, I would rather. I mean, plane flights are not peak humanity, so I get as much work as I can done while I'm in a plane seat, and then I switch to whatever entertainment, and then that's or sleep, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'm walking around in nature or something, that's a great time to be alone with your thoughts. But yeah, it is interesting, as you meant, just on the greater. Before I got into all the raw dogging conversations, the as you mentioned, the mental illnesses and stuff are different, and everything is different.
And the point is, like, we're in this technology phase where Bitcoin is just starting to really get into the Western or global consciousness. And I think I was kind of pointing at your idea that we're all kind of collectively taking stock. We're all kind of taking a breath. And I think this is a good time to do it with Bitcoin, with politics, with economics, with entrepreneurialism, with healthcare, with a lot of things. It's a good time to do it because there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to reevaluate, and there's a lot of new information that's coming out about society that informs this kind of taking stock. Like Gen Z, some of the interesting things coming out of the dating spheres and the delta trends between left wing and right wing politics, and how Women are generally going more liberal, and young men are generally going more conservative. And there's this clash between, wokeism and traditionalism, and left and right, and
You know what we call that
principled and
clash?
what's that?
Raw dogging. That's quite the clash. But yeah, it is interesting to see. One thing I would definitely say is, for me, the future is not that. It's not like it's a positive thing, because I have adapted to the idea that things are going to be different, and they're always becoming different. And I'm
Hmm.
feeling a lot of people have not. They grow up. I mean, obviously the older generations, but even some of the younger-ish generations. There's a lot of 90s, early 2000s nostalgia. Oh, remember when this? And then the old Pizza Hut, and like, remember pizza and then the buffet and the this, and they're just like, there's so much yearning over this. Or like, look at the N64 controller, and back then life was so simple. And I'm just like, I mean, I'm not a spring chicken myself either, but like, I mean, that's old shit. Like, what are we at? What are we doing now? Like, I
Yeah.
barely remember a time before crypto. It's hard to think of myself as Mister Paper check, direct deposit, swipey Bank of America card person. Like
Hmm.
that, and that's only been like 8 years, right? And but
Hmm.
for me that part, but like before there was crypto, and people are like, gold standard, and like that's the best you got. And then now
Right.
there's just this explosion of things. And like I remember trying to teach myself some graphic design stuff, and I just didn't have the talent, like, or didn't have the time to dedicate, and just making like crappy thumbnails. Even on this show, the crappy thumbnails that I have right now were so much crappier before I had AI tools to just say,
Mm.
you know, Michael Saylor sitting on top of the Federal Reserve like Godzilla. Rawr. And then just boom, there you
Right.
go. It's right there, high quality.
Right.
Put it in there, and just it's made my life so much better like that. Crypto obviously just exploding. It used to be such a treasure hunt to try to find niche quality foods, for example, like ethnic foods and things like that. And now it's just like, oh, there's a local shop that's opening up down the street that has like birria tacos. And it's like, oh, that used to be a very like south of Mexico kind of thing, and now it's just like everywhere. It's trendy. It just pops up, and it just like the quality of like ever since I got into espresso, it's obviously been a little. The amount of challenges I've had in feeding my addiction have gone way down now that it's like a global
Mm.
phenomenon. Any city in the world I
Mm.
go to, it's just like, there you go. I can find a nice little place anywhere. It just,
Hmm.
for me, life is getting better, but more importantly, everything I thought is just not at some point, but I'm okay with that. And a lot of people aren't. And that's what I'm saying, like the Bitcoin Cash people, they don't want to let go that Bitcoin is not
Yeah.
Bitcoin anymore. It's a different thing now. And I have let go. I'm like, that's what that is. Or it's like the GOP used to be this. Now, ever since old Teabag came around, okay, but it is, I used to be able to vote Libertarian Party because that candidate represented my conscience. It's like, well, not today, at least not for me. And it's like, these things change constantly. And like, RFK comes out of nowhere. And then, back in my day, celebrities were like, micro farmed from some studio where the Harvey Weinstein guy banged all of them on the way up and all this stuff. And now you just have some girl saying Hawk 2 on a TikTok, and then like back, it's like, I mean, I think that's an improvement if you ask me. But like, the point is, everything is so different. Things change. And yeah, so to your point, like 15 years ago, 15 and a half years ago, no Bitcoin, no crypto. No crypto on the Republican Party platform. Now, all different. Like, oh, like what year is it? It's today. Just get used to it. Speaking of things that change, let's hit on this Bukele thing, because
Yeah.
that's been quite the news cycle. All right, so share this thing. El Salvador's Bukele warns businessmen not to raise prices or there will be consequences against them. He compares his warning to businesses to the one he made years ago against gangs before arresting them. This person's commentary says, he's not a conservative, he's a statist. Yeah, so there's a lot of all over the map commentary on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, my first thing, it sounds like a threat. It aligns with Gestapo, tyranny, communism, statism, for sure. That kind of statement, if it's just that. One thing about these kinds of actions is that it's capital control. It's an attempt at capital control. It's not direct, but it's a threat at capital control. And those capital controls usually precede depression and wars. So there's probably some information that he's aware of, that he's trying to head off. Maybe a lot of people are aware of this, and he sees this as the way to control things for now. But the thing is, capital controls don't end well for governments or their people. They just don't. And people who sidestep capital controls, even to further this point, tend to win after 1 to 3 decades. And it's usually easy to do. I mean, you think about the capital controls that were instituted in America after the crash of 29, when they said nobody can own gold anymore. That was a voluntary thing. I mean, I think there may have been some people going around collecting gold, but you were supposed to turn in your gold. It was illegal to own gold, and you were supposed to turn it in. And some people didn't. Some people said, fuck you, and they buried it, and they kept it, and they won in the end when that restriction was lifted. I don't remember exactly when, but there was a period of time where it was illegal to own gold. That was capital control, and something similar, another version of capital controls, happened in 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard. But you can look at capital controls throughout history of various kinds, and they just don't end well, and they may even foment or add to the idea of war. And then the thing is, like, if you're a business owner in El Salvador and you have supplier costs and you're not allowed to raise your pricing, well, you really have no other option than to go out of business, or I would say sidestep the government. You have to sidestep. So there's probably going to be a number of black markets that are created, because you can't control supply and demand. You just can't. That's something that's literally the market. Even in a completely regulated market, you still can't control supply and demand, not 100%. So the black markets, the side markets, the backroom deals, the privileged opportunities, all this is going to do is push money into the hands of those who are the enforcers and the regulators. That's all it's going to do. Because business owners, if they want to stay in business, they're going to have to start paying bribes to be able to charge the prices that they need to charge to make money, to even carry supplies. So yeah, I don't know. That's my take. My prediction is, if this goes forward and he does actually get legislative action in his country to enforce these kinds of capital controls, I now have a poor opinion of El Salvador, because them supporting Bitcoin was one thing, and Max Kaiser. I wonder what Max Kaiser is saying about this move.
He's in damage control. He also blocked me.
Yeah.
Over this.
What? Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh man!
Well,
wow.
I got plenty of commentary on that dude too. But now the to be fair part of this, right? I had some sternly worded, not very one-sided kind of commentaries on this, but to be fair, for the purposes of the show, fair and balanced, like Fox News, we had. It does not appear that there is a law currently in effect which fixes prices in El Salvador. So you should be able to charge what you want as of today. However, the rhetoric is concerning. What the government has done is this public partnership thing where they're essentially running these like markets where they literally post the prices of like the government fixed price of this, and then private people come in. Private businesses and sellers come in and sell at those prices. It's like a government facilitated market. And this is being sort of used to sort of gaslight and hand wave off. Nah, it's just nothing. You just governments, you farmers markets. What are you smoking? But it's definitely the first, especially with the rhetoric. It's a first step in pushing towards this sort of government tipping, putting the finger on the scale of the pricing of the market systems. And I do think that, if I do think it's kind of bearish. It has to
Bearish for El Salvador or Bitcoin?
yes for El Salvador.
Okay.
Now, I've been a skeptic, as opposed to a critic, by the way, a skeptic of the whole El Salvador thing, the whole Bukele regime from the beginning, right? Where it's hard to tell. It was hard for me to get a read on exactly what he's trying to do. As far as like the Bitcoin law, I wish I could have been 100%. This is a good thing, but I ended up being like 50-50 sort of like, or 60-40, mostly positive kind of thing, right? Where it's like, all right, well, first off, you get people have another thing that's not fiat they can pay with. And also there's all this capital gains stuff that's fixed and all this other stuff. But then at the other hand, you're mandating customers and you're mandating businesses accept a new currency, and so a bunch of other stuff like that I'm like, oh, that's a little heavy-handed. I didn't like how he did that, but whatever. It was like a whatever. And then the country buying Bitcoin, I mean, I like that you'd rather have that as a reserve asset than fiat. But on the other hand, if you're speculating with something that goes woom woom all like up and down like this, I don't know. It was the unilateral decision making was a little weird, and then it's just like, oh, he marked. Then there's a bunch of authoritarian moves that like I think that Westerners don't understand because they've lived in a relatively free and stable country, and I did not grow up in a relatively free and stable country. I grew up in Mexico, which had some serious issues in the 90s, and still to this day, I'm sure, even though it's a lot better. But like you have this guy marching troops into the legislature to try to force a vote that was not going his way. Ooh, that's not good. And then you have, the gang violence cleanup thing. I mean, it's kind of, on the one hand, you have like murder capital of the world, basically, and you're trying to crack down on that. That's fantastic. On the other hand, you round up people and throw them in prison without being tried or suspected of a crime. Just from like, oh, the guy's gang tattoos, throw him away. No trial, no nothing. That's not good. Especially because El Salvador has almost 2% of the population's in prison right now. So it is the highest incarceration level in the entire world. It surpassed
I didn't know
the
that.
U.S. even, which the U.S. had that
Dang.
dubious thing for all. Again, criticize the U.S. for that too, but it's
they've held that record for decades now. El Salvador, wow, that's news.
So that sucks. But it's like, okay, but the violence went down, so that's good. But you can throw anyone in prison for any reason with no recourse. Not good. And then there was they announced this like no free lunch type initiative or whatever. Basically, all prisoners, as far as I'm aware, at least according to what was being said, are now required to work. So it's
slave labor. Here we go.
Yeah, so you get it.
I mean, that is the American model.
You get it right. But the American model, at least, it's not compulsory from my understanding, and prisoners do get paid. And so you can't. So listen, very small amounts.
Quote unquote, yeah.
Listen, I 100% agree that the American model is also akin to slavery. It is also terrible, but it is less. This is more terrible, is my point. Because as far as I understand, they don't get the choice to just sit in their cell if they want, and they don't get the choice. They don't get any money out of it at all. They're paying back their debt to society. Now, of course, if you have if you cause a financial harm to an individual and paying that off, like restitution, I really like that idea as opposed to punitive justice. But in this case, it's just like anyone. So you're telling me the government, for any reason, can just throw someone, just enslave anyone. Like literally, political opposition, or just random off the street. We need more people for the salt mine, just throw them away. That's not good. All that combined with the Constitution of El Salvador does not permit a president to run for 2 consecutive terms. Bukele
Look,
just
I mean,
won his 2nd consecutive term. Oh my gosh, this is like there's a lot of like I don't think my prediction is it's not going well. It's going to pop, and it just has not yet. That's my
yeah,
prediction if I could give one.
I agree. I think it's a slow burn on their culture. It's going to be, there's going to be backlash, but it's going to take 5, 10, 15 years for this backlash to play out because all of the children of these unfairly incarcerated fathers, which is probably, they're not incarcerating women. They're taking men off the street and putting them in jail and putting them to work, basically, and enslaving them. Now, I'm gonna say, as a even like, look, your disgust or frustration or fear of this situation in El Salvador is warranted, but to me, it's just less paperwork. It's the same as the American system with less paperwork and maybe 1 or 2 degrees of heat, additional heat added to the situation.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, ultimately, that's what a free country is a country with paperwork. That's literally, it's like, and that's the criticism. I think that's the praise and criticism of of constitutionally limited government in the same metaphor is paperwork. It's just a piece of paper. The Constitution is just a piece of paper. At the same time, the best thing you could say about it is it's just a piece of paper in that it slows down some of these encroachments of rights. So
that's true.
You're
that's
right.
True. I'll agree with that.
Paperwork.
But the bureaucracy, the bureaucratic mechanism, I think it is a double-edged sword. Yeah, it can be because of the bureaucracy. It can slow things down enough that causes people to think and really make sure that whatever the bureaucratic outcome is justice oriented or righteous oriented or whatever, morally aligned. But I think that tends not to happen because there's ultimately Robert Breedlove blew my mind on this. Fiat currency incentivizes shitty behavior in bureaucracies because you are incentivized to prolong the process and produce no outcomes, basically. He didn't say that, but that's my extended conclusion from the ills of society are all essentially derived from fiat currency. And all you have to do is apply this belief to various situations and you can see the problem. Why would they make them work for free? Why would they think that slave labor is a good thing? Well, because they're trying to make money. Yeah, they can. Yeah, they're trying. And it's a budgetary decision ultimately. I think that they're doing. They're just doing a.
Yeah, slavery is a budgetary decision.
It is.
Listen,
fundamentally.
Tweet that out into the ether there. Just put it out. Just raw dog that one out there. No explanation, and just wait until people are like, "What the?"
I'll write it down and I'll consider it.
Yes.
Slavery is a budgetary decision.
Yes, or just say slavery isn't real. All real estate is in your mind.
No, I can't say that. Come on now. Yeah. That's like thwacking the hornet's nest. So I'll get canceled in a second.
This is actually, now I'm thinking about it, maybe this video will get demonetized by YouTube, but we'll see. That'll be fun if it does, actually. I'll be like, hey, look.
Well, we can test the degree of their algorithm, and I think they only really screen deeply the first third of any video, so you might be okay.
Yeah, and I swear very little on these things. In person, it's a different story. All right, let's hit on these last 2 things, and one of which is about the game of life. It should be pretty simple. So
yeah, that's good because I've got 20 minutes before I need to leave the co-working space where I'm at.
We will definitely have it wrapped up. So Sam Westrich, the CTO of Dash Core Group / the head of Dash Core Group now, I guess, semi. He posted this on the 11th, which is yesterday, and he says, "We are 100% on track to release Dash Evolution on the 29th of July." That is all. You may now continue with your day. So if you continue with your day yesterday, now you know why, because you had permission. Anyway.
I appreciate the commentary, especially given the source. But I I was very pleased. I smiled when I read that because when I first got into crypto, it was 2015. I got into Dash around 2016. I started working at Dash Core Group in 2017 through 2018. And so I saw a lot, in the crypto space and all that. And evolution was the main thing back then. We're talking 7 years ago now. I can't believe it. Evolution was
Evo.
yes, and yeah. So 2017, I went to the Dash, the very first Dash conference in London, and talked about the platform. And now here we are, 7 years later. I could not have predicted that it would have taken this long, but given my experience at working at what is arguably the first DAO in human history, it was not like working at corporate places where there is a clear hierarchy. And I had personally never worked on a open source project where there is the opposite of a clear hierarchy, where it's just all distributed and people just contribute and kind of commit. And I didn't know how. I had trouble orienting in that environment, to know who to talk to about what, to know how to progress decisions, to progress certain apps. It was very much like a collection of lone wolves going in multiple directions. And I found it difficult to believe that anything could ultimately be produced from that environment without some kind of leadership. And, when Bob came in and basically cut a third of the staff, the developing staff, and me being one of them, I was like, okay, well, I hope that this works. I hope this gets, some direction and focus. And it sounds like it may have worked for a short period of time, but then things got messy with Ryan Taylor and all the politics around that. Anyway, long story short, I'm proud of Sam, for getting this far and staying with it for this long, to really have. I mean, this is a really big deal. I am sure that he was very happy to be able to say that, and actually give a hard date and then recommit that hard date. More power to him. I'm glad to see it, and I'm excited. I might leverage it with the tools that I'm building. So
yeah,
good on him.
It would be epic to kind of see that collab now. Yeah, and I do remember those days. It was definitely a time of, there was a lot of just trust us from the outside in to what Dash Core Group was doing. And I feel like there was, in this couched sort of like, what I guess like a lack of reality and accountability kind of thing, just all kinds of stuff happened or didn't happen or whatever. And a lot of that was like a lot of the money that came in 2017, because the price went up and then everything was just like, people were not punished for doing dumb things, kind of. The market didn't punish them. Kind of like with Bitcoin pumping all the time. If there's dumb decisions made around Bitcoin, people are kind of insulated from that. But then the money started going away, started getting some more reflections. Eventually, like I remember for years and years and years, the community begging Ryan Taylor to talk to us once in a while. Why don't you ever say anything? We don't know what you're doing, what you're up to, over and over and over again. Never really changed. Up until finally they had enough and got rid of him. And so after they got rid of him, and then finally you have Sam and the skeleton crew, and not really any authority too much, even just being like, look, I know how to do this. I could code up this damn thing myself, and I will if I'm the last person doing this for no money. I'll do it. But let's get this thing out, and showed a certain amount of leadership and just getting it done. And being very public and transparent about, this is what we have left to do. This is how long I think this is going to take. Just like completely flipping the culture from an opaque, kind of bureaucratic thing to just, it's literally an extension of the guy coding, the mastermind behind it, coding it up himself. It literally is a lot of that, but then also like all the other developers just kind of as an extension of that, of just people getting things done. And what are they getting done? This thing. What is it? Here it is. Just back to basics. And I definitely think, and also Dash Core Group getting out of biz dev marketing entirely and just being like, you know what, we're going to let other people do that. We're going to do our own thing. I think it all helped. But so it's kind of my one commentary also on this, other than, oh yeah, I'm excited, this looks cool. I've actually evaluated it versus modern things like smart contract platform and stuff, as well as far as I can, being not a very technical person. And I do think that this is interesting and unique and has a place in the world today, which is great. But
yeah, I like the pitch that it's like compatible with Web 2 technologies.
Yes.
Like you can build using Web 2 tech, which I think should be appealing to essentially any web developer.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, just a couple weeks ago, I was on a space with the guy who used to do marketing for Swarm City. I don't know if you remember those guys. Remember Arcade
I remember
City?
that, yeah.
And then Swarm City
Arcade
was the eighth
City
one.
moved into Swarm, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and eventually, and during the space, I kind of moved away before the ends of that, but he was basically saying they ran into technical problems, technical limitations of Ethereum. The way they could not access and serve the data from these decentralized database of like merchant lists of like individual listings and things like that. They couldn't do it fast enough. It just didn't work. It was clunky. And so then I asked some of the Dash developers, I'm like, do you think this kind of stuff could have worked on Evolution? And the answer was half of it would have been perfect for it. The other half, you might need a couple smart contract things to plug into that. But basically, the answer is like kind of yes. Like this kind of thing is now going to be doable. So like you will be able to get, as Dash Money, whatever his real name is, likes to call it, he says it's instant send for data. You just go like, call it up like that, and that could be very valuable. So I'm very excited. The other thing is, it's, from my understanding, I've heard this set, and I'll have to I'll have to figure out, I'll have to get all the sources a little bit more straightened for like the less talking shit version of the show. But from my understanding, in like 2017 or so, Evan had coded up like about 15 to 25% of Evolution himself on like MySQL or something, like an early version. And then
he had even started on it in 2014, and then I think the work kind of lulled and then continued in 2015 and 16.
Interesting.
And when I was with Dash Core Group, I met with Sam and Evan in Hong Kong. I want to say mid 2017, could have been 2018, early 18. I can't remember exactly, but we did a big developer Hong Kong trip. We got all the developers together, coordinate, collaborate, and a lot of good things came out of that. But in that time, I was able to ascertain quite a bit about Sam's development and management ethos, and Evan's lack thereof. I mean, he likes to write code, but he's not necessarily interested. He never seemed to be interested in like being a figurehead or leading people or managing people in any close kind of empathic way. And I don't even know if that he would have been really like from a soft skills perspective qualified to do that. So, and I think that's why Ryan Taylor was kind of instrumental, in terms of just managing and coordinating people at a very basic level without the technical knowledge. I think he was doing a lot of that internally. But yeah, so anyway, that's just my take. I didn't want to cut into your point too much. Just sharing awareness with the audience.
But of course, it's so, from my understanding, by the time the whole like, let's write the whole thing in JavaScript type thing, my understanding was in 2020, I believe, there was less of the total code, and that's, I'm sure, after you left, right? But there was less of the total code base for Evolution written than when Evan left off. As in, it was like 5% of the code that ending up in the actual thing.
In the final release,
So from 2020, again, also 2 years after the release date, as estimate in the beginning, there was basically nothing. And so from 2021. So from 2022 onward is when Sam and his team and stuff came in and like topped it off. But Sam on his own built the consensus engine. He was not told, again, he went rogue, right? People were like, oh, we're going to do it this way. He's like, no, you should do it this way. And so he just went into his own cave and coded up Tender Dash on his, for my understanding, it was Tender Dash is what he coded up on his own. And he just came back and said, look, I know you've been saying we should do it this way, that way, that way, but I finished it. It's here. Use it. And so from there, which is like 2021 or so, to today, is like, it's basically 3 or so years of earnest development to create this thing. So like all the years and years and years has just been not doing things or doing things that got scrapped. Like, just like, so this, and it's amazing to see like just all like something got done right? Because a lot of stuff got done wrong because there's a lot of nothing, a lot of waste, a lot of, for years and years and years, and then in just a very short period of time with a fraction of the budget of what was available beforehand, bam, we got a release. So yeah, it's interesting how that works out. Like, the labor theory of value.
Yeah. Well, it could be argued that is a perfectly natural distribution. Like you put in like an oak tree drops millions of seeds and only 2 or 3 grow. Like it's.
I'm gonna use that too.
It's a real thing in the landscape and economy of ideas that done is always better than perfect, and perfect can almost never exist. You're constrained by time, resources, skills, scope. Like there's a lot to take into consideration, and I think that it's really, really important to recognize that for every one successful product, there's 100 dead ones that died on the vine, or there's a graveyard of failed ideas. And it may be true that is the case with Dash, like there's a wasteland of dead, defunct, broken, half-assed projects, right? There's no shortage of those in the Dash ecospace. But maybe that's just how it is. VCs take that kind of risk. 90% of the projects that VCs invest in fail, but their 10% become 10 and 1000x projects. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe that's what's happening here. That could be true. And I'm, as a developer, kind of excited at least to try it out and see if it will work, because Dash is one of those that I thought would be a leading technology for distributed, decentralized information and data tied to financial transactions. I think that's a really, really powerful open source, non-KYC opportunity that is undervalued in the market, but will be valued when we can showcase real, pragmatic, functioning technology. So I'm excited about it. I want to test it. I'm looking. We'll see how it goes.
For sure, it's definitely. It goes to that, like you mentioned, like the constant failure type thing. Maybe failures. I don't like how like they say entrepreneurs have to fail a bunch of. Fail. They should say try instead of fail. Like try a thing that didn't end up working. It's like failure. I think failure seems more epic than that. Like failure is when you're like an alcoholic whose family left him. That's like failure. And like sometimes it does look like that, but sometimes it's just we launched a product and got no customers, so we repackaged the product and it got customers. That's not failure. Like it's
exactly.
It's a little different.
They call it a pivot, I think, is the one that entrepreneurs
that was
like
a fork
to
of
use.
Dash too, right? Pivots.
Anyway, right.
So, but as far as also, we don't even know if this Evo thing is going to pan out in the market. The market might be like, but we'll see. The point is, I'm living on crypto. 5 other people I know, and that's about it. Like no one's using this stuff, despite it being in the, again, we mentioned the GOP platform and everything. Despite all this, very few people. We haven't solved that last little hurdle. And I think
Right.
this is a shot at doing that. And if it doesn't work, we're going to have to try something else because I'm not giving up. So this is our best shot so far. So that's where we're at. All right, let's talk about games. Playing games with me there, boy.
Yeah.
Game of life. Yeah, so I'm
I am
throwing that up on the
embracing that.
screen.
Okay.
Gamify
No,
your life.
did you go to the .org?
Yes,
Yeah. So
docs.ludumvitae.org.
yep. So that is our current like public claim of what we're doing, and for the audience or anybody interested, if you're a coder or an interested marketer or anything like that, and you want to, I mean, I'm not hiring, but we're open to volunteers and contributors of various kinds. If you got you can email me at chuck@ludumvitae.com, and I will, seriously consider any inquiries or offers of discussion and continued. But what we're doing, Ludum Vitae, we are unlocking purpose through play. The big idea is that I'm building a game. I've been designing it for 16 years. We've been coding it. This is my fourth attempt at coding it, but we've been heads down full time for me and my co-founder Alex for 6 months now. We are 50% into a 100K fundraise that should take us through our MVP launch. So if you are an accredited investor or even an angel investor interested in participating in the project, we intend to, we're going to sell alignment, alignment with yourself, your ideas, your heart, your goals. It's a values-driven way to do personal and team project management. Unlocking purpose through play is you take the ideas of your life, you put them in the system, and it gamifies the action around it. We call them gems. Those gems live or die based on your attention. And we're building all of the mechanisms in a real-time environment. This architecture is such a joy to work with. It's all real-time, cloud-native, super fast interface and interaction. And we're starting with the web project, but with this one web instance being the example, we'll be able to scale that and customize it. I think one of our, like, the closest competitor that I've seen right now, or the thing that would be closest to what we may envision as our MVP launch, would be school.com, Alex Hormozi's school.com, where you can create a community, you can charge for content, or you can have a free community, and you just pay school.com for the access, and then there's like a revenue sharing and things like that. And they have points and leaderboards and things like that. But I think ours is going to be different. And I think our app and school.com and some other things are at the very beginning of what I'm seeing as the next wave of economic movement that I don't call it. I derive this from an AI researcher by the name of David Shapiro. The economy of meaning. I heard it from him first. So the economy of meaning is coming. And the economy of meaning is basically, purposeful work, doing things purposeful. 70% of people still hate their jobs, and I find that appalling and literally unbelievable. At this day and age, with all the information that you have, you can't take an hour to figure out what you want to do and find a job that aligns with your skills well enough to enjoy your work. I don't blame people for that because it's not listed as a priority. It's like you got to do your job and pay your taxes and da-da-da. We get just Gen Z, all of us get burdened with these things. But Ludum Vitae is an opportunity to set goals for yourself and track progress. In my research around motivation and productivity, I'm a super productivity geek. I found that the core motivator for people, the thing that causes the most motivation, is visual progress, knowing that you are moving toward your goal. And it's so interesting because a lot of us think that we get dopamine hits when we achieve goals, and that's not actually true. We get dopamine hits when we are anticipating the achievement of a goal. And when you're about to achieve the thing and your brain believes that you're about to achieve the thing, that's when you get the dopamine hit. the Fiero moment when you raise your hands and go, yes, that's after you've gotten the dopamine. That's because you've gotten the dopamine. We got to wrap up. Okay, I'm closing up right now.
Yep.
So
Is that
anyway,
dopamine
long
hit
story
right there?
short. Yeah, no, we gotta.
That's the
She's
dump.
yeah, yeah, maybe
Yep.
oxytocin, serotonin, depending on it. Anyway, long story short, I'm building this thing that is intended to bring communities of people together. It will be crypto integrated at some point, but probably not on the initial launch. However, on the initial launch, there will be tokens inside of the communities that are part of the game. So I want people to kind of get used to playing with tokens. And we're thinking about some initial like alpha ideas. Like, I don't know, I don't know if I want to reveal too much, but like I'm thinking like a survey app. Maybe we could introduce quadratic voting for the masses, as a for instance. This is something that we could do with the technology that we built to date, and just little surveys where you get tokens instead of a vote, and you can allocate your tokens to your various voting ideas. Like I think that might be something to add to the space of polls and those kinds of things for communities. So that's what I'm aiming at. That's what I'm building. We're 6 months into development. I hope to have an alpha by October and a beta before the end of the year. And then early 25, we'll have a MVP launch.
Perfect. Early 25 MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely going to be focused on that. So, ludumvitae.org is what works right now. There is a
It's the doc
.com
site.
that will work at some juncture in the future.
Yep.
And yeah, so sounds very exciting. I have to say, my life does not currently distinguish. My brain doesn't distinguish between the broad categories of work and leisure, and it is a blessing in retrospect. And I'd love to see other people find ways of figuring it out for themselves. So definitely
Yeah.
play the game of life and fail over and over until you succeed, and then yeah, you'll figure it out. So good stuff. All right, thanks for being on, Chuck. It's always a pleasure. I don't want you to get arrested and turned into
Yeah.
unpaid labor for someone. So we'll just
Oh
let
yeah.
you we'll let you do your thing. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.